going on, everybody? Welcome to Storm on the Field with DJ. I am DJ, and today we are here to recap Week 6 of the college football season. But before we get into that, guys, only a small percentage of you who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you guys could check down below that you guys actually are subscribed, I would really appreciate it. And if you do enjoy this video, do subscribe if you are not already. Also, leave a like down the video and comment down below what you guys thought about this week. And yeah, let's get into the week recap. So, this week on my picks, I went meaning that on the season, I am. So, my picks weren't that great this week. And I think a lot of that came because week 6 was pretty hectic of a week. Um, Covering our first game that we covered last week, which was Texas Florida. I had Texas winning that game. Florida comes out and wins it 29-21 against the Longhorns. Arch Manning had a pretty bad game, 16 of 29 for 263 yards, 2 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. DJ Lagway had a pretty good performance, 21 of 28, 75% completion percentage, almost 300 yards, 298 to be exact, 2 touchdowns and an interception. On the rushing side, Texas's leading rusher was Arch Manning, 15 carries for 37 yards. Then Quintrevion Wisner, 8 carries for 11 yards and a touchdown. Um, then for Florida, you had Jalen Baugh, still an amazing running back for the Gators this season. 27 carries for 107 yards and a touchdown. And then you had Duke Clark as well with 9 carries for 38 yards. Through the air, DeAndre Moore Jr. was the leading receiver for the Longhorns, 3 receptions for 75 yards. Then Ryan Wingo, 4 receptions for 73 yards and a touchdown. And then you had Parker Livingstone, 2 receptions for 47 yards. Emmett Mosley, the fifth, 2 receptions for 40 yards. And then you had Quintrevion Wisner, 2 receptions for 17 yards and a touchdown. For the Gators, Dallas Wilson, 6 receptions for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had he had all the touchdowns on the receiving end for the Gators. Then Vernal Brown, 3 receptions for 72 yards. Uh, Michael Strudvent, 2 receptions for 42 yards. Hayden Hansen, 2 receptions for 30 yards for the Gators. Um, the Gators did lose a fumble. It was Hayden Hansen who did lose it. And Anthony Hill Jr. was the recoverer for the Longhorns. Looking at the defensive stats for this game, there were a lot more Longhorns with tackles than Gators. It looks like there were 4 more Longhorns than Gators that had tackles. Maybe even 5. Um, Leading Texas in total tackles was Anthony Hill Jr., with 3 of them being solo tackles. Texas in total had 3 TFLs, 1.5 coming by Ty Anthony Smith, another half coming by Trey Moore, and 1 coming from Colin Simmons. They had 0 sacks in this game, so that's pretty impressive by that Florida offensive line. While a big difference is that Florida had 6 sacks in the game and 7 TFLs. Tariq Sack, leading tackler for Florida, 6 tackles, 2 of them being solo tackles and a TFL. Then Devin Moore had 4 total tackles, 3 of them being solo and a sack, which counts as a TFL. Then you had Jalen Robinson with a half sack, Brain Taylor Jr. 1.5 sacks, Jalen Wood half a sack, Micah Burrow 1 sack, Karan James half a sack, and George Gums Jr. with a sack. So Florida really played well on the defensive side of the ball in this game. I think that's what it was able to allow them to win this game. And I was saying, I do think Florida has a pretty good defense. So you can't underestimate the Gators. Kicking, Florida had 2 field goals by Trey Smack, his longest being a 38-yarder. And the punting was pretty good for both teams. Texas punted a total of 5 times for 236 yards, 3 of those being touchbacks. And then Tommy Domain for Florida, 5 punts for 195 yards, and 2 of those going inside the 20. So let's get into the next matchup of this week, which was also a little bit of a chaotic one. We're going to skip over the one that I had, which was Boise State and Notre Dame, and go into a much more chaotic game of the week. The game that shook up the college football world. The UCLA Bruins picking up their first win against the number 7 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions, meaning Penn State starts 0-2 in the Big Ten this season. Very interesting. Drew Aller had a pretty bad game, a pretty okay game. 19 of 26 for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nico Almeliva, or Nico, we all know him as Nico, 17 for 24 for 166 yards and 2 touchdowns. The real difference was the rushing. Nico had 16 carries for 128 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground for UCLA. Then Anthony Woods, 14 carries for 63 yards, and Javian Thomas, 16 carries for 60 yards. For Penn State, you had Drew Aller, 11 carries for 78 yards, Katron Allen, 8 carries for 50 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then Nicholas Singleton, 11 carries for 39 yards. Looking at the receiving side for both teams, Kyron Hudson was the leading receiver for Penn State, 4 receptions for 52 yards and a touchdown. Then Khalil Duncan, 3 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown as well. Then Luke Reynolds had 4 receptions for 46 yards. And Pena nor Ross had insane games like they did against Oregon 2 weeks ago. So it was very interesting to see, the previous week. It was very interesting to see how that ended up really being a one-game wonder for them. Looking for UCLA, Gilmer had the most receptions and receiving yards for them. 5 receptions for 79 yards and a touchdown, followed by Titus McCall Imatala. Sorry for mispronouncing that name. 3 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. Rico Flores, 4 receptions for 25 yards. Jack Pedersen, 2 receptions for 10 yards. A lost fumble was had by Penn State. They lost one to Luke Reynolds, which was recovered by Roderick Pleasant. Penn State had 3 sacks in this game, one belonging to Amari Campbell, one belonging to Zane Durant, and one belonging to Zariah Fisher, while UCLA only had 1 sack belonging to Jacob Buswick, but they had 6 TFLs and Penn State had 9 in total this game, so not an insane defensive matchup. This was a very high-scoring game at the end of the day. Penn State was down at half, 7-27. They really picked it up in the second half, but this game was close because of the second half. The first half, UCLA really started to run away with this game, which was allowing them to get that win. So yeah, let's get into what was the game of the week. Alabama at Vanderbilt, or Vanderbilt at Alabama. So, Alabama at number 10 defends their home stadium against the number 16 Vanderbilt Commodores 30-14 in a pretty close game. It should have been around 23-14. A last-minute touchdown by Alabama went and very much extended this lead for the Crimson Tide. Looking at Vanderbilt's passing, Diego Pavia, 21 of 35 for 198 yards, a touchdown and interception. He had a very low QBR of only 53.7. Then Ty Simpson, who was the Heisman favorite entering the week, 23 completions for 31 yards, 23 completions on 31 attempts for 340 yards, 2 touchdowns and interception. Cedric Alexander, the leading rusher for Vanderbilt, had 4 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown, including a very long 65 breakaway touchdown to open up the scoring. Then Diego Pavia, 12 carries for 58 yards, his longest being a 36-yard rush. Then this was the real difference maker on offense. Jam Miller, 22 carries for 136 yards and a touchdown, his longest being a 22-yard rush. On the receiving side, Junior Sherrill, 6 receptions for 49 yards for Vandy. Then Cole Spence follows up there with 2 receptions for 45 yards. Then Richie Hoskins, 3 receptions for 37 yards. Cedric Alexander, 3 receptions for 22 yards and a touchdown. And finally, Eli Stowers, 3 receptions for 22 yards. Then looking at Alabama, Ryan Williams came back in this game, 6 receptions for 98 yards and a touchdown. Jeremy Bernard, 5 receptions for 82 yards and a touchdown. And then Isaiah Horton, 4 receptions for 66 yards. Josh Cuevas, 3 receptions for 35 yards. And then Latier Brooks, 1 reception for 30 yards. So a pretty big reception by him. Diego Pavia did lose a fumble in this game. Defensively, Alabama had 1 sack coming from Justin Jefferson. Not that Justin Jefferson. And they had a total of 2 TFLs, including that sack and a half sack by Damani Jackson and by Johanse Pierre. Looking at Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt had 4 sacks in this game, one coming by Zaylen Wood, the next one coming by Corday Sindor, or Sidnor. Uh, then another one coming by Joshua Singh. And finally, Miles Capers also got a sack. They had a total of 6 TFLs in this game. Um, Martel Height was the person with the interception for the Vanderbilt Commodores. It came in the red zone early in the game. And Alabama, Keon Sabb had the interception again in the red zone for the Crimson Tide to basically put this game away. And yeah, this was a pretty good game. Don't let the score fool you. It was a good game. You do not want to mess with Vandy at this point in the season. I do not want to be playing Vandy if I am an SEC team. So let's get into the final game, which was between my Canes and the FSU Seminoles. Miami, in back-to-back years, is a state champion as they win the Florida Cup by taking down the Florida State Seminoles 28-22. Score is a lot closer than the game actually was. Just to give you some perspective on that, 19 of FSU's 22 points came in the fourth quarter of the game. Miami dominated this game throughout. Uh, on the passing leaders, we have Carson Beck, 20 of 27 for 241 yards and 4 touchdowns. Then Tommy Castellanos, 25 completions for 45 yards, 272 yards, 45 attempts. Then 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. On the rushing side, Miami didn't rush much. Mark Fletcher, 12 carries for 40 yards. Keelan Marion had 1 rush for 22. Chamar Brown had 8 carries for 19 yards. And Jordan Lyle finally back in the lineup, 7 carries for 18 yards. For FSU, Tommy Castellanos was the leading rusher, 16 carries for 57 yards. Then Gavin Sawchuk, 11 carries for 47 yards. And Ozuma Chroma, 6 carries for 23 yards. Receiving leaders, Malachi Tony, the true freshman, 17-year-old, is the leading receiver for the Hurricanes. 7 receptions for 107 yards, including a 44-yard touchdown, which was his first of 2. Then following him, C.J. Daniels, 5 receptions for 78 yards, and again 2 touchdowns. And as well a receiving bomb into the end zone. Elijah Lofton, good at tight end, 3 receptions for 21 yards. Then Alex Bauman had 3 receptions for 18, and each of the 2 main running backs, Fletcher and Lyle, were able to get a reception for around 9 or 8 yards. For FSU, the leading receiver, obviously, Deuce Robinson, 6 receptions for 87 yards. Then Loane McCoy, 3 receptions for 39 yards. Randy Pittman Jr., 7 receptions for 39 yards and a touchdown. McCoy was also another player with a touchdown for the Seminoles. Then Chroma, 2 receptions for 37 yards. Makai Danzy, 2 receptions for 29 yards. And Gavin Sawchuk, 3 receptions for 25 yards. Azuame Chroma did lose a fumble, which was recovered by Keontae Scott. On the defensive side of this ball, Miami had 5 TFLs, 2 of those being sacks, coming from Mesdor and Jacoby Thomas, respectively. Mesdor had 2 TFLs, Keontae Scott had a half TFL, Jacoby Thomas had that sack for a TFL, and Ethan Connor 1.5 TFLs to make a total of 5 TFLs in this game for the Hurricanes. FSU only had one sack coming but by Blake Nicholson, and they had a total of 5 TFLs. Blake Nicholson's sack, one by Elijah Herring, one by KJ Kirkland, one by Daniel Leons, and one by Gavin Blackwell. On the interceptions, Bryce Fitzgerald was a very big one for Miami. He brought it up 43 yards on the return. And then Jacoby Thomas with another interception in the end zone, which did not come out for a return. Carter Davis did not have to come out and kick any field goals for the Hurricanes. For FSU, Jake Weiberg, 2 of 2 on field goals as long as being a 35. Dylan Joyce was called out 5 times to punt in this game. 2 times was left inside the 20. And Mac Chiwameto had to come out 4 times for FSU for 177 yards. 3 of those punts going inside the 20. This was a very good game. I was there. I had a great time. Gotta respect Doak and the Florida State Seminoles fans for showing up to that game. And you gotta respect the Seminoles. They kept on fighting towards the end. But it may be that your ACC season is over. Starting 0-2 in a conference is never easy to come back from. However, they do have an advantage of, I believe they are one of the better teams in the ACC. Maybe only behind Miami and Georgia Tech. And luckily, none of them are left on the schedule for the Seminoles. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about Week 6 down in the comments down below. Again, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe down below if you guys did enjoy. And yeah, I bleed orange and green and yellow. And DJ out. I'll see you all in the next one.